First of all, let me begin by thanking the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and everyone who helped to organize this event. I think this is a historical event that brings us hope. Also, let me thank Kristalina. Thank you for such a thoughtful speech. And so we've been discussing during the day a number of problems that we see that we are experiencing in the global economy. It is clear that things are not working well at the global level. Since the end of Bretton Woods, we haven't had share growth. Inequality within countries has been increasing, and that has been, of course, leading to mounting social tensions and political tensions as well. We have a system of rules that deters innovation, and therefore it undermines the creation of supply capacity. The same system of rules also makes it very difficult for countries that suffer problems of effective demand, aggregate demand, situations in which the debt burden becomes unsustainable, to get out of those traps. And finally, we are severely harming our planet. And it is clear that there has to be a change. The rules of the global economy have to be rewritten. This of course, has to do with the problem of imbalance of power and an unhealthy use of power. What I want to do today is to focus on one particular aspect that touched me very close, which is the problem of the international financial architecture for the resolution of sovereign debt crisis. It touched me very close because of two main reasons. One of them is that I've been studying together with a group of people, most notably Joe Stiglitz, this issue for a number of years, also with the support of the Center for International Governance Innovation and the Institute for New Economic Thinking, building on the work of others, including people present in this room, like, for instance, Jeffrey Sachs. He's there. And the second reason is because today I'm the Minister of Economy of Argentina that is suffering a deep sovereign debt crisis. And what we see on this front is that there is a highly deficient international financial architecture for resolving situations of unsustainable debt. When debtors borrow, they pay, in many cases, a risk premium. Basically, that's a premium that says things go bad. There is a protection for creditors in case things go badly. The problem is that when things go badly, there is no formal framework that says, okay, this is the state, these are the moments in which the debtor has to stop making the transfer to the creditors, justify on the fact that it was paying a risk premium. That doesn't happen. There is no legal framework, no international rule of law to resolve these situations in an orderly manner. And what we see is deep suffering. Today, Pope Francis spoke of la angustia de la deuda. There is suffering, so societies suffer. We see that it takes too long for countries in situations of debt crisis to even start addressing the problems. And once they start addressing the problems, most often than not, they get insufficient relief in order to restore the conditions for returning to economic growth and devolving the opportunities to the societies. So what we see in this context are increasing unemployment, increasing poverty, increasing inequality. We see this over and over. The economic theory predicts it, and the evidence is overwhelming. This is what's happening. Not only that, but once a country manages to finalize a restructuring deal with a large majority of creditors, there are still risks that minorities manage to block the finalization of the process. Minorities that buy debt in situations of default, and they follow an cooperative strategy of holding out of the restructuring process and litigating. And there has been a lot of discussion about this over the last years, and there has been very little progress. In the sphere of the United Nations, there were 2 resolutions, one in 2014, that established that there should be a multinational formal framework for sovereign debt restructuring. It's simply the indication of will in that direction. That was a resolution that was opposed by the largest creditor countries. In 2015, there was another resolution establishing 9 principles that should be the basis of such a mechanism. Again, it didn't have the support of the most advanced economies of the world. And the response to that was changes in the language of sovereign debt contracts endorsed by the International Capital Markets Association in 2014, adopting or suggesting presumably more robust collective action clauses. And that's all. Many of us, or at least some of us, argue that that will help, but it will likely be insufficient to provide the conditions for orderly and effective resolutions of sovereign debt crisis. And now we have Argentina. Interestingly, these discussions were triggered by the situation that Argentina was suffering, and there was the problem that it had with the holdout creditors, some of them defined in the literature as vulture funds. And now we have Argentina again. Very quick, the country recovered access to international financial markets in April 2016. It lasted for 2 years. It was very quick, based on a very optimistic expectation of there will be increases in FDI, foreign investment, after changing the rules of the game and the rules of the economy. There was rapid borrowing, and 2 years later, markets said, okay, this is over. We don't believe in this country anymore, and now the country has a deep crisis. All social indicators have been getting worse, all economic indicators as well. And this will be the next big test. It's already the big test for the international financial architecture for sovereign debt crisis resolution. President Alberto Fernandez gave me the responsibility to basically design and implement macroeconomic policies, and as part of that, debt policies to resolve the crisis. And what we've been doing, I want to describe the way we thought about these issues. It's interesting because we had been thinking for years how we would approach such a situation given the complexities of the current international landscape, and now we are putting this in practice. So the main premise here is that doing fiscal austerity to serve debt in a situation of unsustainable debt doesn't work. On the contrary, it's self-defeating. It makes the situation worse. So we had to change that path in which the country was going. What we did here was to redefine priorities. This is a discussion that we had this morning, the need to redefine priorities. Pope Francis also referred to the need to redefine priorities, and that's what we did. But we also decided to make an effort in order to try to resolve this crisis in the most orderly way. We did not want to do spending austerity in that situation, but we decided to allocate some of our very scarce foreign reserves to service interest payments, but we cannot do that for too long. We don't, otherwise that will lead to a depletion of the foreign reserves of the central bank. We basically wanted to give every stakeholder the chance to sit onto the table and to work together to resolve this constructively, avoiding a lose-lose situation. And we've been respecting the terms of the process, and we are giving steps, step after step, trying to do this orderly. trying to restore sustainability on the basis of good faith. Again, time is of essence. We don't want to fall onto the too late syndrome that we see today in the world. So that's why we were very clear about the fact that we need to resolve this quickly. And we even published a schedule. We are doing this in a very transparent way, and we published a schedule that shows that there is a date. We have to resolve this. What is very interesting is that, of course, markets are not used to this, because this is not the way things are done, but the way things are done doesn't work. So we have to do something different here. So the feedback that we get is that this is a very tight schedule, but this is not a matter of organizational issues. This is a matter of economic reality. It is the very harsh economic reality and social reality which makes the schedule that tight. Okay? And this is something in which we need to create more and more understanding among the different stakeholders if we are to avoid what is common in these kind of cases. Of course, the IMF is part of this big picture. We need a comprehensive solution to this problem. The IMF is a large creditor of Argentina now. And the good news on this front is that, in my view, we've been having very constructive discussions with the IMF. In every meeting, I sense that there is an increase in the mutual understanding and that there is progress. And I hope we can continue working constructively to avoid outcomes of the past. And again, for us, there is not a worse outcome than the destabilizing austerity in times of recession. We're not using now fiscal revenues to pay the debt. We're paying with foreign reserves, but as I said, time is limited. Any other outcome is less worse than continuing serving debt when it becomes even more unsustainable and it forces us to a deeper recession. And we are going to be very firm on that. So, there has been a deep emphasis today on the need for new rules for the global economy, rules that work for the people and not just for the elites that write those rules. We will have to do this within the current rules. There is no time to change the rules in 2 months. And there has been also discussion today about the situation of Latin America. It is clear that the tensions in the region are mounting, and there is clear that there has been a lack of leadership. We find Alicia Bárcena's view totally on point, what she shared today with us, that the main problem has been the inequality. And economies that have been growing in the past, but the problems of inequality have not been solved at a speed that is reasonable and tolerable. And that's why we see so much tension today. On the good side, I want to say that I think Argentina is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to bring stability to the region in a context of scarce leadership. My president, Alberto Fernandez, is bringing great leadership. He is bringing great leadership to the country and to the region. On top of that, he's a remarkable goalkeeper in football. You want to keep that in mind. And we're trying to do things in a way that work, very much aligned with the premises that have been put on the table today here. We've been discussing these issues for many years with the help of remarkable economists all over the world. We want to have an economic system that is inclusive. but not just inclusive, but it's also dynamic. Dynamism is important because there are not enough resources in order to resolve all the problems just by redistributing. There has to be shared growth. And for shared growth, there have to be appropriate conditions. There has to be stability. So in a context of very, very tight constraints, we decided to redefine priorities, and it has a work for changing the mood. Of course, much more needs to be done. We need to restore the consistency of the system. We need to resolve the problem of unsustainable debt. Otherwise, any effort would be ineffective, and that's why we have to do it fast. And the chances of succeeding are higher if the positions of the different stakeholders are constructive. We are doing our best to act in the most constructive way given the constraints we face. We do see a constructive approach from the IMF, actually very constructive, and we're happy with that. That is not enough, we need more. There are some ministers of finance here who are for countries that constitute the Paris Club. That's also a problem that we need to address. Argentina is going to pay 9% interest rate on debt from 2020 to 2021 with the Paris Club, and that is just not only unsustainable, but it marks a very bad anchor for the rest of the restructuring. It is definitely not pari passu with what we are intending to do. So we may understand the complexities of the Paris Club, but if we are going to do things right, we need cooperation there as well, and we need cooperation from the bondholders. Joe Stiglitz said something earlier that immediately came to my mind out of the many things that Joe said that have come to my mind over the last years and penetrated into my mind. But it was this issue that the same investment funds that are bondholders, they have business models that are focused on very narrow views of the world. Even the same universities in which we learn and we create knowledge are invested into these funds. And then when we enter into situations of unsustainable debt, what we see is a divergence of narratives, of languages, of mind frameworks and frameworks of analysis in general. And that makes communication sometimes not as constructive as it should be. So I hope we can also educate the world. This is why I think this kind of meeting is so useful, so helpful for the world, and it's historical. And I hope we can all work together on creating a different kind of mentality that help Argentina today, but the world in general, to create a more sustainable environment that work not just for the privileged, but for the many. Thank you.